welcome to the Betty Boop and Downhole Finger Licking Good Home Country Lodge. We're so happy you decided to join us to celebrate America's birthday.
Well, thanks, but I'm just wondering, does the room have a butler service? And seriously, what time is that spa open? Because I am dying for a facial. And I also noticed your room service menu doesn't have foie gras.
Do you live, eat, and sleep the hotel industry? Looking to brush up on your game? You've come to the right place. Welcome to No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast, with your host, Glenn Hausman.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the No Vacancy Podcast with me, your host, Glenn Hausman. I'm excited, I'm delighted, I'm thrilled to have you here with me each and every single week. But if you happen to be catching the show for the very first time, thanks for jumping aboard and listening today. And if you want to subscribe, just simply text the word hotel to 66866. That's the word hotel to 66866, and you're going to get our Sunday night newsletter every single week delivered to your mailbox. And also check out novacancynews.com and let me know what you think. So I also want to say that this show is brought to you in part by Duetto, the revenue strategy technology platform thousands of hotels are using to make more money. And be sure to check out my recent interview with their CEO, Patrick Bosworth, on what you need to know about hotel revenue strategy. It's also a great deep dive into the history of revenue strategy, where it came from, where it's going, and how you can make more money. Now you can check that out at getrevenueresults.com. And if you're interested in taking business back from those OTAs, click on the Duetto website ad on my website, novacancynews.com, and you'll get free access to that white paper. It's going to be great. Also, if you haven't checked out our brand new 10-episode first season of The Tech Show, episodes 1 and 2 are out now on this feed. Be sure to download those soon. Coming soon, we got a great new design show, and of course, that much-promised show with Anthony Melchiori of Hotel Impossible, Travel Channel's Hotel Impossible, and other great shows on the Travel Channel. We'll be showing that up. We'll be launching that one very soon, and I got to tell you guys, I'm excited. We had a little trouble figuring out a name, a back and forth, forth and back, all that kind of good stuff. But I think we came up with one. I think you guys are going to like it. And I swear we are getting close. But as you know, everything seems to take me a little bit longer to do. So today what I wanted to do is I'm bringing somebody in. You know I love design. That's why I got this whole design series that's coming. And I figured let's get a sneak peek. But also combine the idea of design with culture and foreign countries. So that's why we got Mr. Jon Kastl. He's one of the principals of the internationally acclaimed interior design firm Champalimaud, and he's the lead designer behind the recently debuted Waldorf Astoria in Chengdu, China. Jon, how are you today, sir?
Glenn, I'm great. I'm really happy to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Hey, I'm excited to have you here, too. So what I think is great about Chengdu is not one of those cities that people hear a lot about here in the United States, unless you're kind of really fully ingrained in the business world, right? We hear Shanghai, we hear Beijing, but Chengdu happens to be a tiny little city of, 15 million people or something like that, right, Jon?
Exactly. That's right. It's true. Most Americans haven't heard of Chengdu, and you're right. It is a city of 15 million people.
Yeah, and for a little reference for everyone, that's in the Sichuan province of China, also where some of my favorite food comes from. And Jon, really important fact to this podcast, my favorite Chinese restaurant going up, Sichuan Royale. So we've got all sorts of crossovers today and excitement.
Well, there you go. You need to get to Chengdu if you like spicy food.
I do.
It's a place to be.
I do like spicy food, but I get scared of Thai spicy food. That's just a little too aggressive for me. But I think China does a great job with their spicy food.
They do, and I became a big fan in my years of traveling to Chengdu for the project. So we'll go together and eat well.
Yes. So let's talk a little bit about Chengdu as a hub for that part of China and why this project was needed, and then we'll talk a little bit about the project itself and give everyone a little understanding. For those of you listening, it's fun to take a deep dive into some of these markets out there. We get to learn a little bit about them, especially if you haven't heard of a city like this. So tell me a little bit about just Chengdu in the broad points, and then we'll kind of drill on down till we get to your hotel project.
Absolutely. So what's really fascinating about Chengdu is during the course of working on the job, it was actually elevated to a primary city status. So it has the same status within China as Beijing and Shanghai do. So it's now seen at a very sort of high level, very important level within the country. And a big part of that is because it's become a very prominent sector for the tech market. There's a lot of technology that's produced there, including most of the sort of iPads that we all use are manufactured in and around Chengdu. So it has become a hub for the tech industry.
It's pretty interesting. I had no idea that's where they were building the iPads. Maybe I'll jump in your luggage the next time you go over there, because mine is getting old. I need to replace it right now, and I can't think of a better way to do that.
Absolutely. Let's go right to the source.
Yeah. So why has this place become a place for technology? And is it more in terms of building technology, or is there an innovation aspect to it as well? I kind of think about how Tel Aviv has become very focused on technology innovations, but they don't necessarily build everything there.
Right. I think it's both. I think, it's a big production place for the hardware, but it's also a tech development zone. And actually where the hotel is located is their new high-tech zone within the city. So the city has been very aggressive about developing a large section of the city as a high-tech zone. And the Waldorf is one of the anchors of that zone. So it's very important for our hotel to be part of that emerging market.
So how do you go ahead and start to think about creating a property that's part of an emerging market? Because I guess the first question you need to ask yourself, ultimately, who is going to be the customer? Because I think it's pretty easy for me to be sitting here in New York in the United States and go, oh, it's just a bunch of Americans that are going over there. But the way that I see China developing and growing, I'm not so sure that's the right answer.
And you're right, it's not. I mean, absolutely, a certain percentage of the hotel guests will be American or from other parts of the world, but it will not be necessarily the primary guest. Right. They're definitely looking at sort of the traveler within China and the business traveler in particular coming from other parts of China to Chengdu. Oftentimes when you stay in luxury hotels in Beijing or Shanghai or the eastern cities, they do tend to have a predominance of Americans or other Europeans who are staying there. We will definitely have that mix, but we will probably have a higher percentage of internal domestic travelers as well.
Excellent.
And it's really interesting because I think that's one of the key touchstones of the brand, right? So Waldorf, we're now the third Waldorf in China.
Right.
We're the 200th Hilton hotel within China. So they see China as of course, a strong market for them, and really looking beyond those eastern cities and expanding the names into the center of China. Right.
And I think that's so important to point out is though the major brands, I think, started to go in there, and originally over before this century, for let's say the 1970s, 80s, and 90s, it was more like catering towards that American traveler that was there. Now we're really talking about that global traveler as well as the domestic traveler that's doing a lot more business and needing more of an upscale place to stay. So aside from Chengdu being home to the giant panda, I'm wondering how many of those guys are checking into the hotel, and if you've got a great assortment of bamboo leaves on the menu. That's really what I'm focused on.
Well, I have to tell you, one of the exciting things I got to do on two of my trips was actually visit the great pandas and hold a baby panda.
Oh, my God.
I have to tell you, I've traveled all over the world, and it is up there in memorable experiences. It is absolutely such an important thing and wonderful thing to get to go see and visit. So another reason to go to Chengdu is to see these beautiful pandas.
That's really awesome. So, okay. So now we've established we've got pandas there. It's also a hub of nature. There's a lot of famed fauna that's over there. But you're also appealing to that domestic, also international audience. So I'm going to say that all of these things kind of create that top level of what you start to think about when it comes to designing a property. But again, I'm just guessing. I'm not a designer. I just talk about stuff.
Absolutely. You're 100% right. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad you mentioned the comment about the sort of nature and the naturalistic setting. Chengdu is seen as a green city within China. Right. They equate it to our Seattle, that it's a very green, outdoorsy city. It has a very casual lifestyle compared to the rest of China. It's far enough away from the eastern cities that it's not influenced by that culture. It's much more Western,
Really?
much more relaxed. It has a very large tea house sort of lifestyle where people spend a lot of their time in tea houses, relaxing, visiting with friends. It's very much part of the culture. It's fascinating because you don't see it in other parts of China, and it's completely unique to Chengdu. And that's in large part why so many Chinese are actually traveling to the region. Not only is it the food and the panda bears, but it's the natural beauty. And then they use it as a stepping off point for the rest of Western China to make trips further into China. It's fascinating as a location.
Wow, that is interesting. So how do you use that to create a coherent design language that really connects with customers that are either there for business or pleasure, and of course are members of different cultures?
Sure. So, what we did was we started with the brand and our knowledge of the brand. We had worked quite a bit in the hotel in New York, so we were very familiar with the DNA of Waldorf and what that means. So we built on that understanding of the brand, developing the interior architecture that related and had a sort of essence in New York City Art Deco.
But then I'm looking at the pictures right now, and some of which I will post along with the show notes. And you are so right. It really. I'm looking at the, for example, the lobby photographs and what appears to be the library. Very New York-y in a sort of sense, but not overly New York. It's kind of, I think, and again, I don't know the design language here, but you have like subtle cues that say that it's that, but it's not really that.
Exactly. So we definitely looked at the touchstones of the hotel in New York for inspiration. The beautiful metalwork, the great stone detailing, all these wonderful features that the hotel is known for, murals, bas-relief, things like that, and then we brought them to Chengdu, and we looked at them through the lens of the location. And of course, we looked to this naturalistic aspect of Chengdu. So you'll see features in our hotel. We have a glass wall that sort of travels up through all the public spaces, and it's large bamboo stalks and leaves abstracted and cast in beautiful thick glass that's all internally lit. It's magnificent. And of course, that's what the pandas eat. We didn't want to be cutesy about bamboo leaves. We wanted to take it to another level and make it sophisticated, but it really is part of that local story. We have beautiful mosaic tile work in the all-day dining room behind our buffet, which is based on silk patterns that were embroidered in Chengdu. It was the center for embroidery within China. So we looked at sort of historical pattern making that related to the silk industry and the embroidery industry, and we brought those forward into mosaic patterns. So we were always looking at ways to interpret local customs, local motifs into the project. And you'll see that sort of throughout, from the chandelier in the lobby to the paving patterns used throughout the hotel. It was really some of our key elements.
Well, how do you take cues from the original classic Waldorf, which are definitely represented here, but also convert them to make them applicable to the local environment with which it's in? I know you talked about the bamboo leaves and all that kind of stuff, but I feel like it's more impressive than that, because this hotel looks ultimately very modern and very symbolic of where China's going, and I see how it ties in a little bit to more of that tech central kind of culture, but you also managed to highlight the feeling of the original Waldorf without it feeling like it's from 1910.
Correct. And, of course, we didn't want to create a pastiche of the hotel in New York. We wanted to be inspired by it. So we were dealing in a 62-story, brand-new high-rise that was built in a high-tech zone.
And the lobby's all the way up at the top, it looks like, from what I'm saying.
The lobby is a sky lobby.
Very
it's
China.
On the 50th floor. It has amazing views of the city.
Yep.
But we had to be contemporary. We had to speak to the location, the building, and but we also wanted to infuse it with the spirit of the brand. So we really looked at, what does it mean to sort of pull from this Art Deco vibe? And we looked at Art Deco within China. Of course, Shanghai was a very big Art Deco city.
Right.
So we looked sort of at a different vocabulary from not only New York, but places within China from the Art Deco movement, and how we could pull those forward and make them feel contemporary, but really rely on key things like the beautiful screens that you see throughout the project. Very important aspect of Art Deco design, metal screen work, right? So we developed a whole new vocabulary that we used on our project. Things like, stone floors that are highly rich and detailed.
Right.
Again, very much what's done in the hotel in New York, but we did it through a lens of Chengdu, where we were bringing in naturalistic motifs relevant to the location. We also looked at things like murals. We did a series of large murals throughout the property, which are really quite stunning. Sometimes they were done in mosaics. Sometimes they were done in more traditional paints. We also did a series of bas-reliefs, three-dimensional wall sculptures that are throughout the project. And those tended to be very naturalistic in their representation. So again, it was how we brought the location into the hotel.
Why even bother with some of the Art Deco touches? If you're talking about such a modern rising city, why did you feel that it was essential to harken back to the past in some sort of way?
Well, a couple things. I think the first being that it's important to the brand.
Right.
The Waldorfs want to have a certain sort of storyline across properties, right? So, and it all ties back to the mothership in New York. So it all wants to be sort of referential to that hotel. But I also think it was very much our owner's desire, the people who developed the hotel from a real estate side. They really wanted the hotel to feel, to have sort of a Western attitude in it, right? They wanted it to feel like a bit of the U.S. They wanted it to have a certain point of view that was not just a sort of traditional Chinese point of view, of course. They wanted it to feel more international. So I think, blending those two aspirations, both the brand and the owner, is how we pull through those core ideas.
That's fascinating that they chose to go with more of that international feel to it than something that's more rooted in the cultural elements of the country with which it's in. How does that Chinese culture play itself out throughout the property, aside from just some of the the bamboo leaf sculpture type stuff?
Sure. It's interesting because I think a big cultural idea is the socialization around the hotel. So when you go up to the top of the hotel, the 49th through the 52nd floor are where all the public spaces are. And we really did something really unique. Instead of creating a bunch of separate restaurants and bars and venues, everything is open plan. So everything flows freely from the lobby into these different venues. And what's wonderful about it is that not only are you sort of moving around the space horizontally, but as you're looking up through the sky lobby, you get all these wonderful vertical connections into different spaces. So the feel of it sort of has that layered Chinese excitement, lots of people sort of mixing around, milling. It's very social. And I think that idea, which is a little abstract and probably hard to communicate, is actually one of the strongest ideas in the hotel, is that it's this attitude towards enlivening all of these spaces and really making the top of this building feel like the excitement and the sort of center of everything, and it's very buzzy. It's really a great feeling.
That's pretty cool. What about moving a little bit towards the meetings type of business that they're going to have there? You had to focus on all of these ballrooms. What percentage of meetings are they going to have? Weddings do they think they're going to have? And how do you make sure, especially when it comes to weddings, that might be more very culturally dependent, and does the design alter for those types of spaces?
That's right. So it's interesting. In the meeting room, there definitely is a way of conducting business in China, right? So we had to develop these suites of meeting rooms that would relate to the local customs. So we have VIP rooms and rooms where people sort of gather in a UN assembly style almost, right? Where they come after a meeting and they do photo ops and they sort of make declarations about what happened in the meeting. So there's rooms that are purpose-built for that and are obviously arranged and designed in a certain way to accommodate that. And then you have other things like the ballroom. The ballroom is really stunning and was really designed as a social ballroom. and really looking at wedding business as a core part of the business. Again, I think, Waldorf is interesting because in New York, it's such an important social hotel. I mean, it's always been the hotel in New York where charity balls were held or are held. I mean, the amount of money that's been raised out of those ballrooms over the years is sort of unimaginable. So what we try to do is sort of carry that level of importance around the social aspect of those ballrooms to Chengdu and really make this a social center for Chengdu as well. We wanted this hotel to be the place where you would host your wedding. This was very important to the brand and the owner.
So how long did it take for this whole project from the day that they said, "Hey, you got the deal," till you were able to start construction on it?
This one was a little over 5 years.
Woo! Wow.
Yep. I lost a little hair during that process. But it was from the day we started designing until the hotel opened, I think it was just about 5 years exactly.
How many, 5 years seems like a long time, but then again, I'm not a designer. How many iterations do you have to go through? What is that process like over 5 years? I can't imagine it's like you design an entire hotel in a month and the owner comes back and say, redo the whole thing. What is that process like? So I understand why it takes such a long, 60 months.
Sure, absolutely. So our design effort probably took 18 months from the start of design until we documented it. And by documenting it, I mean doing the construction drawings, writing all the specifications for the furnishings. That process for us was probably a year and a half.
Right.
And then what happens, of course, is they have to build the building.
Right.
And that's what ultimately takes time. So while we were doing all the design work, they were just starting to dig a hole in China. Wow. And so really from the point we turned the project open until they opened the hotel, it took another, sort of 3.5 years to complete the project. Wow. Interesting thing about my world is that all of the furniture in the hotel is all custom designed. It's all bespoke for the property. It's all custom made. Oh, my
goodness.
Everything in that hotel is all custom. In addition, the building is 62 stories. The hotel takes the upper portion. We also designed the lower portion as well, which is all service departments.
Oh, wow. Yeah, service departments are a huge thing. I do a lot of coverage on the service department business here on the No Vacancy podcast. And also, if you guys want to check out heretostay.tv, I shoot a video news channel for the service department industry. Man, I got to tell you, John, I'm looking at this picture right now of the swimming pool. I'm a guy that loves swimming laps as opposed to going on the treadmill. And that fitness center and that swimming pool looks unbelievable. Wow.
Thank you. I am so proud of that pool. I think it's terrific. And again, it's on the 46th floor. It has the most captivating views of the city. It is really special. Another reason to go check out the hotel.
Yeah, and it looks like it's big enough for me to swim laps in, which would make me super duper happy. So what lessons did you learn coming out of this 5-year project on designing hotels in China that are internationally feeling, or whatever, anything else that you were thinking about?
Well, I have to admit, this was my first hotel in China, and I've been doing this for many, many years now, so that's kind of surprising that it was my first. I feel very fortunate, I have to tell you. I had an excellent owner to work with. They were fantastic people, great developers, and had terrific relationships with the brand. So I leave this experience feeling very excited about what we did and also future opportunities in China. I mean, it was a terrific experience. I have to tell you, it's no sort of horror stories to tell.
That's great. What about when you're working with, I'm going to presume that they're Chinese owners.
They are.
What's it like with the language barrier and trying to get some of, I'll just use the word esoteric thoughts when it comes to design across so they could really understand what you're talking about? Or do you have to rely more on visual medium?
Well, it's interesting because the leadership team of this owner, they were excellent English speakers.
Oh, awesome.
English was not an issue at all. So everybody that I dealt with spoke excellent English. Many were educated in the West.
Right.
And then in terms of visuals, yes, of course, we developed really photorealistic, like renderings, elevations, that's don't leave much to the surprise. They really tell the whole story. Interesting thing, I think I made one trip over with a colleague of mine, and I think we had 12 suitcases of finishes that we brought with us to Chengdu. And we literally sat for 3 days, and we went through every single finish in the hotel, from the fabrics on the chairs to the stones on the floor, the whole package. So,
I think I lost you a little bit. Could you say that one more time?
Where did you lose me?
After 3 days. Let me start that off in 3, 2, 1, go.
So we were there for 3 days. We went through absolutely everything, from fabrics on chairs to stones on floors. And, we really don't leave anything open to interpretation. We're control freaks. We want to make sure everything's perfect. And, of course, the owner expects nothing less.
Excellent. So how does I think that this asks me the bigger question that I have, in generally speaking, when you're talking about owners, how savvy are they with design, and how much they rely on you to create stuff, and then do you communicate those again through drawings more than just words? Because I know I'm a words guy. I know something when I see it if I like it, but if you were to tell me we're going to do this, this, and this, and this, I'd just get confused.
Yeah, absolutely understood. It depends on owner to owner. In this case, our the owner's representatives were trained as architects and designers, so they knew my side of the table. They were very familiar with what was needed to communicate the design. So that really wasn't an issue here. I mean, with other owners, it can be an issue, of course. So you just have to try a bit harder to communicate design intent.
Right.
We do everything. We do videos. We do beautiful, photorealistic drawings. We do fun, more casual freehand drawings. We have a really sort of large wheelhouse of how we communicate design intent to people.
Excellent. So, finally, when it comes to, the design intent, how do you think about overall these projects are going to affect the city that they're in? For example, this Waldorf, it really changes what's happening within Chengdu. And I think not only ratchets up what's being done, but helps introduce a new design dialogue to that particular market.
It's fascinating, right? I mean, that is really the interesting part of my business, is that when you go into cities, you can really change a neighborhood. You can change the location with a new hotel. We see that happen in New York City still, where hotels come in and they radically infuse a neighborhood with new energy. So somebody like a Waldorf, that's a very big name.
Yeah.
Putting a stake down in Chengdu, where they put it down, and building what they built sends a very strong message. It not only sends it to the local community, but of course the China in general, and of course beyond. That Chengdu is an important city. So all of the importance of the brand communicates the importance of the project and the location.
Excellent. Any final thoughts on all this before we wrap up?
No, I mean, one final thought I have is that I really would encourage people to make that trek further west into China, because those of us who have spent a lot of time in China know the eastern cities really well, but the rest of the country, boy, it's worth checking out. There's so much going on, and it's really exciting. And it's different. It does change as you move into the center of the country.
Yep, it sure does. And by coincidence, as we are recording this, I was in China 4 years ago this week, so I'm feeling very connected to that country right now. And I really want to go back. This hotel sounds absolutely incredible. Before we wrap up, you know what? I got to give you a shameless plug, John. So how can people find yourself and Champalimaud?
Champalimauddesign.com.
Yeah. Great. And that is Champalimaud. So you got that little French kind of ending there. So
that's right.
Be cognizant of that when you're checking it out. And we got Jon Kastl. I want to thank you so much for being here. And guys, we're going to be right back with another great interview after this commercial break. Man, we got a good one. I don't know which one it's going to be at, because I have a whole catalog of great interviews waiting to give to you. We'll figure out which one it is, and you and I will both find out right after this message. But in the meantime, be sure to set your gear shift to the high gear of your soul. See you guys right after the commercial break.
Have a question for your host, Glenn? Tweet him now at Traveling Glenn. No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast. We'll be right back.
Hey everybody, I'm excited to let you know that on Monday, just in time for High Tech, I'm launching a brand new 10-episode series, the Hotel Tech Podcast. I'm partnering with SHR, that's Scepter Hospitality Resources, and I've got myself an incredible co-host for this, Estella Hale, who's their Chief Product Evangelist. We're going to talk everything hotel technology, everything that you need to know about understanding the incredible changes that are happening in our business. So check it out. Coming Monday, 10-episode first season, the Hotel Tech Podcast, with me, Glenn Hausman, and Estella Hale. Listen out for it.
Back to the show. It's No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast, with your host, Glenn Hausman.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the No Vacancy Podcast with me, Glenn Hausman. I hope you're having a great day today, because I know I am excited here today because I've got the guys from Menin Hospitality, and that's Jared Galbut, who's the managing principal of Menin Hospitality, and another principal of Menin Hospitality, Keith Menin. Now, these guys are interesting to me because they're headquartered in Miami, and since 2005, they've been creating a great portfolio of hotels, restaurants, and nightlife places that you know, and we're going to get into that in just a second, but I want to introduce them to the show. Gentlemen, how are you today?
We're doing great. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Glenn.
Hey, guys, I am super excited to have you here because you know what? I think that when it comes to you guys, you're really at the intersection of, cool and happening over there. Man, that was the lamest way to introduce you guys by saying that, how cool you are. But hopefully you guys will make me cooler because you've got that South Beach style all down. And I'm just a guy from New York trying to learn how you make it happen. So, Keith, Jared, I think the best place to start is to talk a little bit about your portfolio. You've got 15 venues now, including nightlife, restaurants, and hotels, including the Gale South Beach, which is a major South Beach property, and the Shelburne South Beach. So just go for it. Give me a little summary of what you're up to.
Sure. I'll give you a little background. We are a locally grown and built hospitality company. We really started out about almost 10 years ago in the hotel side of things, and eventually grew into building a restaurant and nightlife portfolio, mainly down here in South Florida, which comprises of about 15 different venues, like you said, about 8 hotels and 7 restaurants and nightlife venues. And both of those sides, the hotel and the restaurant, are going to be growing pretty tremendously over the next couple of years throughout Florida and throughout the U.S. in different areas.
Right. So, thanks, Jared. That was a great way to summarize it. I'm curious as to, how you get a business like this started and how you create something that's interesting, unique in that South Beach neighborhood, because all of those older buildings started to, kind of rot away. The neighborhood started to fall apart, and then it started to make this great resurgence, and all of these old buildings started to be turned into something relevant and enjoyable. And from what I've seen and how much it costs to have a drink at some of your properties, hopefully highly profitable for you guys as well.
It's been obviously great, and we've grown tremendously over the years. There hasn't been an exact science to how we've built our company, but I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. And Keith can talk a little bit about it. When we really started the company started the first parts of our company, though it may not have been so organized back then, we had started developing the Sanctuary, which was an older property down here, and it really was the first property of that boutique hotel movement down here in Miami Beach, taking an old property and renovating, which led to us doing more property. So I don't know if Keith, you want to touch a little on that.
Sure. We like to have fun in what we do. So we look at projects like blank canvases and kind of see what's missing in the environment, in the market, and really create stuff that we would hang out at, spend time at, and want to be in. And thankfully, our intuition's right, and it's where other people want to hang out and be and also spend time as well.
So I guess the question is, how do you trust your intuition when making such a large investment in doing something that hadn't been commonly done before? I mean, now it's obvious to put on my my hindsight glasses and say, wow, what a great thing. But when you're looking forward without that sense of clarity, how do you trust in yourself in order to create a product that you know internally is going to really connect with customers in a unique way?
So the good news is I don't think that everybody should do it because it is so challenging and it is risk and it is opportunity.
Now, Keith, that sounds to me like you just don't want competitors, which I think is a smart move on your part, but sorry, go for it.
but you know, it's we have this intuition and what we think actually works, and you have to have fun with it and manage your expectations and know that, you know, it may not always be easier, it may be harder sometimes, but for us, it's fun. Normally, we kind of, you know, are pretty spot on, I think, in really what our demographic going to want, and we enjoy it. We take the risk, and we, you know, have the up and down with it. But you know, it's definitely, you have to be very entrepreneurial, but also very hospitality driven. So it's a fun combination of a hospitality entrepreneurial trade that I think, you know, gives us that.
So what were some of the things, first of all, I guess the question is, which was the first property that you developed down there, and what were some of the elements that you thought were necessary to include that you realized were going to connect with customers in ways that we hadn't typically seen before in the Miami South Beach region?
So I think the first one we did was actually the Sanctuary many years ago.
Right.
Around 10 years ago. And there, what we thought to do to make it fun was that, you know, most hotels in South Beach were pretty straightforward, right? It's a building. Right. You walk through a front door, and there's a lobby and rooms above you and a pool in the back. Mm-hmm. So in our first hotel, we did it a little bit different, feeling that people in Miami really want to feel Miami. Right. So we actually created an atrium-style hotel. So you actually walked in a lobby, but then when you opened doors, you were outside. Right. And your room, you opened door was outside. We planted beautiful trees and water and greenery and music and just kind of created the atmosphere of something different. And then since we were on a dry lot without a beach, we did a beautiful rooftop pool and a rooftop bar. So, you know, it was a way of making people feel like you have an indoor room to spend time in, but you're really outside enjoying Miami. And we had the backdrop of the ocean and the skylights and the beaches and all the buildings. So that was kind of like our first fun adventure.
Right. So how do you turn that into you know, a growing empire over there? 15 different venues. That's it's pretty serious.
Yeah, I think it was all a little bit of, to be honest, it was a little bit of luck and opportunity. Mm-hmm. At the success of the Sanctuary really led us to get more opportunities. Keith was able to get an opportunity down here and partner with Morgan's Hotel Group at the time and to do the Mondrian and develop that property, which now we're managing. Coincidentally, and you know, I was able to go up to Chicago and help develop and build a property that we still have today called the Raffaello, which is about a 175 room hotel in downtown Chicago. So it really provided us that one instance, the Sanctuary, the development of that property allowed us to get these opportunities, which allowed us to then, you know, kind of move on to other opportunities and eventually form what was Menin Hotels initially. Yeah,
I feel like the Mondrian Hotel really helped move forward the design dialogue, for example, on what you could do with the South Beach property, taking that old historic building and turn it into the epitome of really cool. Now, I've stayed there a couple of times, and I'm amazed by how many different things that were introduced, in my opinion, in that product that now seem to be pretty much at every hotel that's got some sort of outdoor day life, nightlife kind of scenario to it.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit it. Again, is that that was actually a very unique hotel in that it was the first property in Miami, or first hotel in Miami Beach that was on the bay there. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how many, if there will be any more after, but most, everyone thought of Miami and having, you're either on the beach or you're on Collins Avenue. But Keith and Morgan's created something different at the time, that they wanted to have the opposite view. And they wanted to create this amazing pool that had a great view on the Biscayne Bay and also had docks and water sports and all these activities. And it turned out to be a major success. So, we like to, whether it's the restaurants or the hotels, we like to do things a little bit differently and try things and really expose, the travelers and the guests that are coming in to different aspects of Miami that they're not used to.
So how do you do that through the visual aesthetic of the properties that you create?
Keith, you want to talk a little about that?
Yeah. So, every property is somewhat unique, right? It has its own identity. So we try to really figure out what the personality of the project's going to be, whether it's a big hotel like the Manjan,
Fabulous,
or it's a taqueria called Bodega,
right?
And really bring in the right design help along with our internal team and really create that personality.
So how do you go? What's the exercise that you go through in order to say, oh, this is going to be this, and that, and really espouse what we're trying to go for?
Normally, it's to sound funny. We sit around a room.
Yeah.
We come with a concept. We pull a bunch of imagery, and now today with the internet, it's so easy to pull up different ideas and palettes.
Yeah.
And we kind of create what we think something should be. Then we take it to a layout, and then we take it to a little bit more of an in-depth design. And then we figure out, okay, we got a concept. We know the look, we know the feel, we know kind of the layout, what the personality is, and we find out, kind of how to move it forward. But really, it all starts, with pen and paper, from scratch.
Right.
Yeah, and a lot of it we get inspiration from, our own personal experiences traveling.
Right.
So, as Keith and I are, always traveling to different areas of the world, and we always get inspired and say, wouldn't this be great to have in, to build a hotel with, we had this or add this to one of our properties. So I think like with our experiences, not only traveling, but our experiences in Miami, that allows us to really create something special for our guests and travelers.
How do you know if what you're thinking is a smart idea or one that's that may or may not be embraced by customers? How do you trust your gut is what I'm trying to say.
I think that Keith and I really, a lot of the times, I think we start out with, going back and forth with each other and say, hey, I've got a crazy idea. And, that usually we go back and forth with each other for a while. And I think the ones that we agree upon, when we go, yeah, that sounds great, are really the ones that we give a shot, and if it works, sometimes, a lot of the times, like what Keith said, it is work. They do work, and we trust our intuition. A lot of the times they don't, but I think what makes us such a great company is that we're so nimble and adaptable that if it doesn't work, we can move quickly and have our team move forward and come up with something new.
Very interesting. Now, I know that you did the Gale South Beach, a total renovation, reinventing the whole property from its original classic design. $35 million in 2012, and I know you're going to be doing it again this fall. Another, major reinvention of the property. But maybe you could tell me a little bit about how you guys, you got in there, some of the opportunities that you found in there, some of the challenges that you found there in order to create something that makes people want to come and spend their money.
Well, I think that it was a very unique property that actual building had been in and out of our family with one way or another. Right. And then eventually it was kind of sold back to, it was an apartment building, then a nursing home, an apartment building. And then it went back to Morgan's Hotel Group, where they were going to cross the street, the Delano, create something. So there's a long history behind it. And we had the opportunity back in 2012, about 2011, to actually build a property very similar to kind of the concept of what was created Sanctuary, into this really high-end boutique property on Collins, and do it right and spend the necessary money to give that area of Collins on the dry side something I had never seen before. And I think where we became so successful was not necessarily that we had this groundbreaking design, was that we learned that every area of our properties needs to be programmed. So in small properties like that, we just don't leave areas blank where there's nothing there and it's just either a couple chairs. We make sure that we figured out the back area, which used to be kind of like just an exit to the building, we turned into a great cocktail lounge. We turned the basement, which just used to be storage and get flooded every once in a while, we turned it into a great nightclub.
And swimming pool, I guess, on typical flood days.
Yeah, so we learned that every piece of the property needed to be programmed. And it turned out to really redefine that area of that dry side area of Collins, on the opposite side of the beach. And people and big hotel companies really followed us along the way. And you saw the emergence of very similar style properties from us, all the way from 14th Street all the way up to now what is the Faena district of similar properties like the Gale.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You guys really help set the tone for a lot of the properties that would come. I guess that's both satisfying and kind of makes you grumble at the same time that other people are coming in and taking what you've done and making it successful. But I'm curious as to how you take an old structure and turn it into something modern and relevant. In particular, the whole idea of the rooms are just so much smaller than what the modern American is necessarily looking for. So you're working with a small footprint. How do you get everything to work in the room so guests are happy in the room, but I guess you also want to encourage them to be out of the room spending their money? Keith?
I think guests, when they're on vacation, especially Miami, it's like an adult Disneyland where, everyone wants to have fun. So, we try to make it to where, from the time you wake up, you have a beautiful juice bar in the front, to a great lobby, to, have an aperitif on the pool deck, to the nightclub that Jared defined. So, we really just try to take every inch of the property, create activation, and kind of like tell our guests what to do, almost help them out, because not everyone knows where to go when they wake up in the morning. And we try to curate the entire experience when you're with us on our properties.
And I think a lot of it, now the trend is actually maybe indirectly or subconsciously we created these smaller rooms, and now it's all the trend,
right?
Like that it's very popular to have these smaller rooms. But those days of having these large rooms, people want to be outside the room. They want to experience have all the local shops, dining, see what the city has to offer. So as long as you create a comfortable atmosphere like we've done at our properties, the room size in some way is not such a huge factor anymore in the decision making of the traveler. They're more interested in making sure that it has everything that they need, it's comfortable, and that to some way or another, what we provide them in experiences and the programming is more important to them.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. So what today in 2018, as you're looking forward to reinventing some of your properties going forward, what is relevant to the guests today, and why do you believe that to be true?
Well, relevant to the guest, I think you go back to comfort, you go back to technology, which is more and more having the accessibility to all of their devices, the comforts of their home, and having that on the road or while they're traveling is very important. I think it's making the process seamless. Nowadays you look at most people in the millennial age, or everyone's on their phones. That's how they interact. Kind of the human-to-human interaction sometimes is a little, unfortunately gone in certain experiences. So,
right.
We try to kind of, have a equal amount of that human experience, but also make things very easy that if our travelers aren't, want to interact so much that they can still have access through apps and text messaging and getting things that they need and want during their stay very easily at their convenience and how they want to communicate.
Excellent. Keith, did you want to add anything?
No, I think that's actually pretty spot on. We adapt to technology and who our customers are.
Yeah. So how do you balance then that technology with the face-to-face interactions as we're in this in-between space where it used to be really high touch, but now it's kind of high tech, but you also got to keep, having that those special interactive moments with the customers, because if you don't, I think that then you're really, really missing out. It's I think when you leave a property, you go home with the memories of not just the place, but of the people that populated it as well.
Yeah, I think it's all about, you do have to have that balance of it. So, again, you want to give the guests the experience that they want. If they don't want to have people, necessarily all over them and asking what they need every second, you want to give them the ability to ask for things remotely through their phone or through other various, other various ways. But also, and ways to balance that is that we also provide really great programming at each of our properties.
Right.
So whether it's a yoga class that our GMs or our managers attend, or it's a great cocktail hour, learning how to make cocktails in our different cocktail bars. Those are ways that we get, guests in our executive team to interact and still provide that face-to-face contact in a way that's not so forced.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I do these interviews all the time, and this is the big issue that I'm concerned about. And it's become evident to me that the bartender may be the single most important person for customer experience driving within the hospitality environment, especially, I would say, in a place like South Beach. Very fascinating to me. So I'm curious as to, this is another question that I like to ask. Are you crazy or are you geniuses with opening restaurants? Because margins seem to be so slim right now. And yeah, people are eating out all of the time, but it seems to be a difficult business to be successful in. Why are you approaching it in such a strong way? And what do you think you're being able to deliver in terms of profitability to your bottom line?
Believe me, it's funny. The restaurant business is very, very tricky, and I think it's probably one of the most highly unsuccessful opening closings per day of any industry.
I know.
There's a really funny stat with that.
Yeah.
We actually acknowledge that, but we do have a passion for it. So
right.
we tend to do more fast casual when it comes to food.
Very on trend.
And really focus on bar and energy.
Yep.
And that kind of movement. We really don't really do fine dining, to be honest. It's a complicated business. The margins are, 8-10% at best, maybe 4 or 6. It's just too tight for us. But that's why we like doing, high energy, food and beverage, fast casual with a fun bar component is kind of more of our restaurant DNA.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Fast casual is definitely the place to be. I think that now as we're moving towards more of a society that has so much focus on the screens that are in front of us, that last bastion of really having a personal contact with people is over a meal. That's one thing I think that's going to be protected from all the technology that we have out there. And we're seeing more than half of all food dollars being spent now outside the home instead of at grocery stores. So it makes a lot of sense. How important is that drink list these days? And is it all about creative cocktails, or is it just about the beers and the basics?
I think it depends where you are and who your clientele is. I think, even if it is a beer and it's a basic, make it an authentic, great beer. And if it's a basic cocktail, have a great glass, have great, interaction and great fruits and mixers and things of that nature. So, we have all clients, right? We have the guys in Chicago who love the craft cocktail, the, one-of-a-kind bourbon you can get, or an amazing mixologist style drink. And there's also, people in Miami at the pool just want a great beer. So, if we do serve a great beer, it's in a Mexican restaurant, it's a Modelo, or it could be Peroni, but it's something authentic, the right temperature, the right feeling. Everything just has to be perfect regardless. I think there's clients for all of it, and that's what makes it fun.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, especially with the right temperature. And this is a public service announcement to all of you hoteliers out there that have beer taps. Please make sure they're cold. Make sure they're set to the right temperature, or else we're going to have to send John Taffer from Bar Rescue to come over there and yell at you. And you do not want that to happen. He's a very tall, scary, frightening kind of individual. So, guys, what's next for you? Where's all this leading? What do you hope to achieve?
So I think we have kind of realized, I think through opening up all these different restaurants and hotels, that, we're really going to be focusing on a few brands on the restaurant side. Bodega seems to be very successful, it has been a very successful venue for us. We plan on expanding that throughout South Florida. And hopefully into different parts of the U.S. at later points, in the coming years. And, from the hotel side, we've got a lot of great brands. The Gale, we're moving forward, and we are going to be opening up later this year the Gale Fort Lauderdale. We're potentially looking at bringing that brand nationwide as well, and expanding our hotel portfolio, in the coming years, because that's kind of how we started, right, and how we grew this company, and believe it's a future as well. All
right, so Jared, looking at the Gale Fort Lauderdale project, it was once the historic Escape Hotel, which opened post-World War II era in the 1940s. being that it's you're reusing a property, is that kind of the model you want, to find cool buildings that already exist and then turn them into modern hospitality environments, or are you maybe flirting with some new construction depending on markets at some point?
I think it's both. I just think coincidentally that the opportunities that were presented or come across,
right,
excuse me, are seem to be very like the Gale model on South Beach, where it was an older building built back in 1940s, and we gutted it and made it brand new again. It's a very similar story in Gale, Fort Lauderdale, and some of the other properties that we're looking at bringing Gale to. Yes, there has been older structures that we want to renovate and bring to life, because I think it goes with the whole Gale motif of what is old is new again kind of thing. And but yes, in the future, absolutely, if there's a newer project that the Gale would work on, or another one of our venues, where we look at all different types of the opportunities and new construction we would be interested in as well.
While new buildings are great because they allow you to create something that's really on trend and right size and all of that stuff, blah blah blah, I love older buildings that are brought back to life. There's something about the character and history of the place that I think goes so far to help you better connect with consumers when it comes to something like that.
Absolutely. We couldn't agree more. And if you look at most of our properties, they have the same story.
Yeah. So before we wrap up, I'm curious as to how you're able to, open a property and all of a sudden get a whole lot of people to come there and be successful, pretty much, right out of the chute. So what is your marketing strategy in order to draw people to your hotel properties?
I think it really changes per property, and the different location, how we're going to set it up. And it's changed over the years. So I think it's really it's fortunate to be able to create a brand and a name for ourselves and Menin Hospitality and some of our hotels and restaurants. Right. That it's a little bit easier from what it used to be. But now, as long as it's programmed right and the offerings are interesting enough, people are curious and want to see what's going on in their neighborhood and see what, potential like local companies like us are doing to excite these neighborhoods. So I think we like to do everything really naturally and organically. And we found that to be the best way over the years. Sometimes when you do those huge over the top, crazy grand opening parties, they seem to backfire. Whereas if you did it more naturally and organically and introduce yourself into the neighborhood and the community that you're going to be in, you are more accepted in the long term. So
Jared, then how are you able to get influencers to help do the marketing for you through social media and stuff? Because I talk a lot about, when I'm doing speaking engagements on stage, about setting up those social media moments so others can help promote you. You probably think about that often.
I think that they have become a huge part of marketing either your hotel and or, especially in the restaurant industry. There are specific, types of influencers for each of the industries. And we definitely love them and embrace them. And, and it's also the right timing as well to bring them in. Sometimes during the opening, that may not be the best time, for them to experience a property. So we pick and choose the right time when to get them involved and really have them experience the way a guest would and give real and honest, feedback to their followers.
Right. Excellent. I think that is absolutely perfect. All right. Before we wrap up here, Keith, anything that perhaps we didn't speak about that you're dying to get out and share with my audience?
I think you got great stuff.
Awesome. Very, very succinct and straight to the point. All right, guys. How about some shameless plugs for you? How could we find you?
You can find us online on all the different social media sites. On Instagram, it's at Menin Hospitality. You can also find us on our website, www.meninhospitality.com, and Facebook as well, Menin Hospitality, really everywhere online. Excellent. I love it. Keith, anything else you want to add to that?
Please follow us. Please come out. Exciting new stuff. Big Cinco de Mayo block party for Bodega on Cinco de Mayo. And we're excited.
Excellent. I love it. I got to get, next time I'm down to Miami, I've got some buddies down there. We're definitely going to come and check out the Bodega Taqueria y Tequila. Man, I love that. So, hey, and for all of you, I want to thank you all for listening today, and be sure to check out the good guys at Menin Hospitality. I had a really good time talking with them today, and I will be back next week. That is, unless I decide to just go waste my life away in South Beach. Thanks for listening. Be back next week.
Thanks so much for listening to No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast, with your host, Glenn Hausman, online at rouse.media, on Twitter at Traveling Glenn, and on Facebook.com/Glenn.Hausman. We'll catch you next time.